sisters back again. We are back to talk about A Curse for True Love by Stephanie Garber. Said it before and I'll say it again, this is going to be a long video, so go ahead, grab your snack, grab your bevy, and dive right into this complete plot summary for A Curse for True Love. This is book 3 in the Once Upon a Broken Heart series. I will go ahead and leave links down below and up over here for plot summary 1 and 2 in case you haven't watched those yet. I know I've gotten a lot of messages asking for book 3 and we finally did it, and I have my spatula. I may not have my whiteboard, but that's okay. Just because we're traveling doesn't mean we can't be doing the Lord's work over here, and that's exactly what this is. So I've got my script, I've got my book. Let's get into it. Now, our cast of characters for this book, as always, Evangeline Fox, Jax, the Prince of Hearts, Prince Apollo, Lala, Chaos, and then a new character has entered the chat, and that is Aurora, and she is one of the Valors that was in the Valerie Arch from book 1 and 2 that they opened at the end. She is of the Valor family along with Chaos, so we learn in book 2 that these two are brother and sister. The Valor family was stuck inside the arch. When his helm gets taken off at the end of book 2, he attacks and kills Evangeline. And in order to save her, Jax reverses time, but in doing so, Apollo is able to basically wipe all the memories away from Evangeline. I have very, I think, cleverly appointed Prince Charming from Shrek as Prince Apollo. Correct me if I'm wrong. Now, Jax is currently on the run because Apollo has told everyone that Jax is to blame for Evangeline and Apollo kind of being torn apart, Apollo having the curse put upon him and almost dying, yada yada. And Evangeline is currently none the wiser to all that has unfolded after the arch was opened up and the Valor family were released. And thus our sad tale begins with our girl E in the arms of Apollo crying. And the last thing that she remembers is essentially her father passing away. And this man who she thinks is her savior, her husband, is super concerned for her, just wants to be there for her. But she is overcome by this thought that she is forgetting something very, very important. Now, Apollo in this time he's not being very forthcoming with questions that Evangeline has for him. He's nervous and honestly just winging life at this point. And I mean, honestly, did he not think this through? Like, if you're gonna take someone's memories, have a plan. But anyway, he tells Evangeline that they need to leave from where they are, which is like wherever this Valerie Arch thing is, so that he doesn't come back. And currently everyone in this palace, or even the Magnificent North, they all think that Jax is the current like big bad wolf villain of this story because Apollo is going to be like spreading all these lies about him. Now, chapter 2, the maids and the guards are taking Evangeline over to her new bedroom chambers. They're also really freaking out that Apollo is seen alive for the first time because in book 2, everyone thought him to be dead. And he's basically just telling everyone that he went to hell and back to just get back to Evangeline, his one true love. And he keeps kissing her knuckles and just trying to be really charming in front of the maids and the guards and stuff. And I don't know about you, but for me, unless you're Mr. Darcy, you don't get to be kissing my knuckles or touching my hands like that. Okay, just one woman's opinion. Anyway, we're back in her chambers. She's taking a bath. She's smelling like flowers. The doctors are coming in. They're questioning her, but they're being really vague. They're just trying to make sure that her memories are gone, which is super odd, but whatever. And as they ask her all these questions, there's someone behind these doctors, someone who doesn't really look like a doctor, but he's dressed like a doctor. And it says he was dressed much like them in long brown leather tunic, worn atop fitted black pants, and belted with 2 straps of leather that secured a series of knives and vials to one hips and a harness for a book to the other. When he caught her staring, he winks and he brings a finger to his lips, gesturing for her not to tell, and for some reason she didn't. And we find out who this person is later in the chapter. It ends up being that journalist guy, Christoph, from the other books, who is really just trying to get the inside scoop on Evangeline and Apollo. So that's what that's all about. So then she goes to bed. Night goes on, but she has a dream of being carried, and we get a glimpse of her very first vision, and it says he would carry her through more than just freezing waters. He would pull her through fire if he had to, haul her from the clutches of war, from falling cities and breaking worlds. And the chapter ends with Evangeline and Apollo talking about getting her memories back, but Apollo is basically telling her that it's probably for the best that she never gets her memories back because what she went through was so traumatic. And if you guys haven't seen that red flag guy from TikTok, we need him right now. One of my favorite bits about this book is that we finally get multiple POVs, starting with Apollo. And we do get a little backstory to him from like his childhood and what was expected of him since he was a prince. No one really needed him to be anything other than like this pretty boy. He didn't have to seem to be like brave or like taken seriously, and so now he's really trying to embody that. I think that's going to give us motive going forward. And we also in this chapter get a little bit of his guilt over lying to Evangeline, but he quickly justifies his actions. So don't worry, even though we feel a little bad for him right now, we will quickly go back to remembering just how stupid he is by this quote. He knew it was for the best. Jax had tricked her just as he'd fooled Apollo into being his friend. If Evangeline fell under Jax's thrall again, he would only destroy her, but Apollo would make her happy. He would make her a queen who would be loved and adored. He would more than make up for what he'd done to her in the past as long as she never found out. So anyway, he goes on about his day. He's telling the newspapers to make Jax a villain. We need like an APB out for this guy. He's making sure every day that Evangeline does not know anything. She doesn't have her memories back. And then we get a meeting of the Council of Great Houses. And this is where we see for the first time in this book, the Valor family, specifically Wulfric, who is like the main father. And remember, he was trapped in the arch, but because they don't want people to know that the Valor family is back, they've changed their name from Valor to Vale, and that they are this long lost great house family and they want land. And he's basically being described here as very respectable, very imposing, very intimidating, and Apollo's just kind of getting the ick. But again, he needs to do this because he feels like he owes them for healing him from the Archer curse. Since Wulfric's wife is a healer, we learn that in book 2, so she heals Apollo, and like in return they want to be a great house again, they want land, they want money, all this stuff, so they make it happen. Also really weird in this chapter is all these great houses, because they're like really suspicious of our girl Evangeline because they remember her being seen with Jax a lot before. So they're like, you just need to knock her up and then we can believe that this isn't really a sham. And it's kind of weird. Now back in Evangeline's rooms, she is trying to live her best fairy tale life. Okay, she's getting all the pastries, she's getting all the gowns and all these things, and people are just really treating her weird. Like the physicians, again, they're kind of just making sure rather than trying to see if she gets her memories back. They're like, okay, but you don't remember anything, right? Like that. Weird. Apollo eventually leaves his little meeting thing. They go for a little stroll down the halls, and she comes across a wanted poster of Jax. And it says, Lord Jax, wanted dead or alive for murder and more heinous crimes against the crown. And he's kind of taking her on this like date night thing. Okay, so they go to this tower somewhere in the hall and there's a fireworks show, and they explain that it's because it's fire night, which is like this northern magnificent north tradition. It's supposed to bless them for their marriage and that Apollo is back and they're living happily ever after. And the chapter ends with them kissing, though that she's hearing this weird voice in her head that's telling her danger, danger, danger. Can't figure it out because cute boy plus being a princess should equal happily ever after. But just something's not adding up. She's feeling weird. We get to chapter 6 and we meet a woman named Madame Voss, who is supposed to be like her tutor, okay, on all things of being a princess, and it's giving the Princess Diaries vibes for one, trying to teach her how to be a princess. So Madame Voss gives her this book, and remember, books in the Magnificent North, the stories are always changing because of the story curse. So whatever book you receive, like you never really know if that book is telling you the truth of whatever. So she gets a story, she opens the book and she sees a story about the archer and the fox, and she's getting some weird tingly sensations. She's convinced enough that she needs to get her memories back. She knows something is just really fishy. So she tries to leave her rooms and she talks to the guards and they're not letting her leave. And then they find out that Apollo told the guards that they weren't allowed to let her leave for her safety. And to make matters worse, Apollo is currently on the hunt for Jax, and he's using these guards. Give Knights of the Night vibe, okay? If you know, you know. And one of these guards has like a weird bird, and they need Evangeline's blood. They think that they can track Jax with it, so they, without her consent, they take some of her blood. It's just like a really odd situation. And Apollo is starting to act less princely, okay? So we're seeing the beginnings of that. Definitely not a great look, okay? The next day, Evangeline gets a message from her princess tutor, Madame Voss, that she needs to meet her in the gardens, and her new guards, because she specifically requested new guards, follow her. They go to the gardens, okay? The note says, "Your Highness, I thought for today's lesson we might see a bit of the royal gardens. Shall we meet on the half hour before noon at the Well of Wishes? I will, of course, try to be there on time, but if I'm late, don't hesitate to make a wish." She's super excited, and so she starts making a run for it. She's going to the gardens, and she can't find her tutor, but she remembers the note said that like if she's late, you know, just hang out here, and if you want, make a wish at the well. So she is like leaning over this big well thing. She's looking at it, whatever. And I know that Evangeline is pretty notorious for being naive, so really we should have all seen this coming, but as she leans over the well, she gets a shove from behind her back and she falls in. She's screaming for help. No one's coming. She's tangled in her dress, and it's just not really a good situation. Then we get this on page 82. Then we hear someone calling her name from up above, and she's screaming for help, and someone goes and throws a bucket in there and is like, hold on really tight. And we get a voice that says, grab it. Commanded the voice. It was a sort of voice she would have obeyed even if her life hadn't depended on it. So she gets yanked up, she's back on the ground, and she gets a good look at the guy, her savior, and it says, he was beautiful, inhuman, a warrior angel with blue eyes and golden hair and a face that made Evangeline think that writing poetry should be her new hobby. And then we get another memory. It starts spinning, so she kind of like gets these flashes throughout the book where I think she zones out because she sees a vision from something in her past. It says he held her so tightly it hurt. This pain she didn't mind. She'd let him crush her, let him break her, just as long as he never let her go. Kind of goes on from there, the vision. The chapter ends with her getting whisked away by some unfamiliar guards. Her savior is nowhere in sight. We have a few things to mention here. Just off the bat, number one, where are her original guards? Because she's noticing that they're not first guys that took her to the gardens. Why did her tutor never show up? And 3, Apollo sounds really cute and scary obsessed the next. Because we get this on page 97. He says to Evangeline, I'll always protect you, Evangeline. I meant what I said when I first returned from the dead. I'm never going to let you go. And that's what we call foreshadowing. Okay. Chapter 11 is the beginning of my fangirling. So bear with me. We get our very first chapter with Jax. Now hear me out, okay? The truth of the matter is, some of my subconscious does believe it's cute for a guy to hide in the shadows while watching someone sleep. But we can unpack that another day because Jax is here. He is ready to equip Evangeline with fighting moves to kind of protect herself because obviously she's doing a terrible job at it. And she doesn't know what his name is, so he just tells her to call him Archer. Anyway, he throws her a shirt and is like, let's go. We need to start fighting we need to start practicing right away. There's no time like the present. So he takes her over to this bridge and is like, okay, I'm going to pretend to attack you and I need you to learn how to kind of disarm me and get myself off of you. The whole time he's doing this, he's like super close to her ear and is like, and she's blushing, but obviously he's like a stranger, so she doesn't know how to feel, okay? They're just doing a terrible job at trying to fight or whatever this is. So eventually they end up falling over the bridge and she lands on top of him and he's like, all right, well, at least just take this dagger of mine and it will keep you safe because obviously you can't do it yourself. And then he leaves her again. And while all of this is happening, we have We go back to Apollo, and as Ricky Ricardo would say from I Love Lucy,
you got some explaining to do.
Because in the next chapter with Apollo, we learn that the tutor and the guards were not responsible for Evangeline falling in the well or giving her the note, and that the note was actually written by Apollo. It says, it was too late now. It had been too late ever since he told Victor and Handel to give Evangeline the falsified note from the tutor, to pretend to lose her in the gardens, and then to push her in the well. But Evangeline had given him no choice. Apollo felt a pang of something like guilt. He hated to do it, and he hated that things had come to this, and that Evangeline's lack of trust in him had forced him to take such drastic action. But he was doing the right thing. Isn't it fun watching a hero slowly descend into madness? I think that's what we can call it, especially after he tells the guard to torture these guys, even though he knows that they are completely innocent. He just wants them tortured and then have them killed. Again, even though he knows they are innocent. Like, you know what the best cure is for falling into wells and torturing guards and dying tutors? A banquet, of course. So that's exactly what Apollo does. He has a banquet. He invites all these like hoity-toity people over to dance and eat and drink and whatever, and show off his beautiful bride, and everything seems to be going well. Evangeline here is introduced to Wulfric Vale and his wife and daughter, aka the Valors, okay? And we're also told through Aurora what they are doing in town. Vengeance Slaughterwood of House Slaughterwood was once engaged to the most beautiful girl in all the North, only the girl didn't love him. Her parents refused to let her out of the engagement, but she refused to marry without love, and on the day of the wedding, she runs away. Of course, Vengeance couldn't let her go. He had a name to live up to after all, and so when Vengeance heard a rumor that this beautiful girl loved Lord Merrywood's only son, Vengeance razed Merrywood Manor, Merrywood Village, and the Merrywood Forest to the ground, thus living up to its terrible name. And everyone's super annoyed by Aurora for telling Evangeline of this story, including her mother and father. They're just very angry and like, they don't like the story. So they're pretty much, because they were given this land from Apollo, they're hoping to remake it into something better, and they're hoping to like rally the troops and the townspeople and everything to make Merrywood Village like whole again and beautiful again and all that stuff. Actually, Apollo gets called away and Evangeline gets bored of this party. She decides to leave, so guards make her go straight back to her rooms, and she goes to bed, and again she is attacked by someone. Someone's trying to kill her, but fortunately for Evangeline, she's got a stalker, and Archer is there to save the day and kill this assassin, get some information. But then Archer is mad at Evangeline for her lack of self-preservation, even though she can't really help it when people keep trying to kill her. She doesn't know why, because she has no memories. Like, while this confrontation, while they're going back and forth with this banter, Evangeline can't help but feel like she needs to touch him, and so she barely like grabs his arm or whatever, and she gets another memory, and it's a scene of them from when they fall in the water together, and we just love that scene so much. If you know, you know. But yeah, she gets another memory. Now, it's not a really good night in the Magnificent North for anyone, not for Evangeline, but really not for this one family who literally just gets massacred, and Apollo and his guards are going to inspect to see what happened. It seems like there was like a monster on the loose or something, and there was only one survivor, and it's like a little boy. So Apollo goes upstairs to check on this boy and see what happened, because again, Apollo, he's searching for Jax, right? So he talks to this boy, and this boy is describing what happened, and Apollo knows it wasn't Jax, okay? He knows it was the work of, you know, a vampire or someone that is capable of doing that, but they're not, like, those are just monsters. And so he knows this. The boy knows this, but he's like, I just want you to draw a picture for me. Can you draw this person? And then he pulls up a picture of Jax, and this little boy draws him, gives the picture over to Apollo, and Apollo's like, thanks, and then he kills boy, goes downstairs and tells the guard that the boy was able to get a drawing of the monster that he saw, and we need to send this to all the papers so that they know that it was Jax. And the chapter ends with Apollo feeling a moment of sadness. He wasn't really a monster. He just did what had to be done. A boy this trusting and this cowardly wouldn't have made it long in this world. So again, he's justifying his actions with like some really crazy explanations of I don't even know. But yeah, it's not really looking good for Apollo here, guys. Sorry if you were Team Apollo in book 1. If you've read the ACOTAR series, it's giving Tamlin 2.0. And back at the castle, okay, Evangeline and Archer, they're kind of going back and forth again. She's trying to just shoo him out of the rooms. She's really upset with Archer because she knows that he knows something that she doesn't know, but he won't tell her what it is. And she's like, I know you. Like, what are you to me? And he looks her straight in the eye and is like, nothing. And they're like flirting and they're doing their thing, but eventually he leaves. By that time, Apollo comes back. He's bloody. He's like in distress. He's stressed out. And so anyway, they have like a little moment and then they kiss. But unfortunately for Apollo, Evangeline gets another memory. We get another little flashback and he can kind of tell something's off with her. So then he gets really not happy about it. Fortunately for us, we get interrupted of them kissing because we get switched again to Jax's POV. And the first sentence is, Jax had seen enough. If he stayed on the balcony any longer, if he kept watching, he would kill Apollo. If Jax stayed, he would storm in the room and use his powers to make Apollo watch as Jax told Evangeline that she wasn't nothing to him, that she was everything. He convinces himself to not do that, obviously, and he says to himself, if Evangeline was going to have any future, Jax could not be a part of it. So he leaves the balcony and does his own thing. Honestly, I feel like Apollo and Jax, they need to realize that they need to stop meddling in this girl's life, okay? They keep trying to make decisions for her and things just keep going terribly wrong. And you would think they would learn by now that all of this mess is of their doing. I digress because we need to talk about that family from before that just got killed. Now the monster, okay, that was Chaos. Remember Chaos? He's not good, okay? His helmet came off at the end of book 2 and obviously he accidentally kills Evangeline and he just has these impulses and he's not doing good things, okay? And honestly, he's partly the reason why Evangeline's memories are gone. None of this really would have happened if it wasn't for Chaos. So I don't know, I'm torn. Like, are we mad at him? Do we feel bad for him? So anyway, the next few chapters, we learned that little tidbit, and the next few chapters are about this thing called the Hunt. And it's like this weird tradition that they have in the Magnificent North, and Apollo is gonna be doing it. They're like trying to like chase some unicorn, even though they're not gonna kill it. They're just trying to hunt it for whatever reason. It's like a game, okay? So all of these guys are there and Evangeline wants to go as well and like cheer on Apollo, whatever. And she actually for once gets permission to leave the palace grounds with her guards, so they go. She has either the worst luck or the most incapable guards ever, because she's trying to find Apollo, and so her guards are like, well, I'll go this way. This guy, Lord Bellflower, he was at the council and at this banquet earlier in the book. He's just being really sketch with Evangeline, but is like, oh, I saw Apollo this way, come follow me. So her and this one guard, they go follow her. He kills this guard and now is trying to kill Evangeline, and he's super upset because he was in love with this girl named Petra, who, if you remember in book 2, when Jax and Evangeline were looking for those like stone things for the arch, they accidentally ran into Petra, and Petra was trying to kill Evangeline, and she ends up dying in the process, and he's super mad about it, this guy. So that's what that whole fight's about. Now, remember, Evangeline doesn't have her memories, so she doesn't even know what's happening at this point, but they're fighting. She's able to get away from this guy, and then she makes a run for it into the forest, and this forest is like super dangerous. You don't really want to go in there, especially someone that is so untrained and incapable of anything like Evangeline. But she does it anyway. She's in there, and it alters your minds, so you see memories from your past, so it like, you can't see the forest, you just see the flashbacks, okay? And so she sees this room that her father used to have, like this little curiosity shop. So she's seeing all these visions, she's seeing her parents, and then she meets this handsome stranger, and this handsome stranger is telling her that you need to a mutual friend of theirs because he's gonna make a mistake, and you're the only one that can like stop him from making this mistake. Now we know this handsome stranger is Chaos, but she does not know who that is, okay? Conversation gets cut off by Archer / Jax coming in and being super mad at seeing chaos this close to Evangeline, because remember what happened last time chaos was close to Evangeline. So he plunges a sword into chaos, but chaos can't really die like that, so he's just like incapacitated for a little bit. Well, Jax and Evangeline, they make a run for it. They're stuck in this forest, right? If you tie someone together in this forest, you can share a core memory, right? So Jax / Archer, he does that. They're like conjoined at the wrist or whatever, and they're in a memory of his. Meanwhile, Evangeline, she's freaking out, okay, because she sees all these wanted posters with Jax, and she's learning that he's, you know, wanted and dangerous or whatever. So she's just really confused right now. They're going back and forth. It's a whole thing. She's convinced he's a monster, right? And so he tells her, I am a monster, but whether you remember it or not, I am your monster, Evangeline. Anyway, Jax is really struggling here because he's confused by his feelings. Try not to kiss, right? This whole moment, they're like right here to each other. But he can't do anything about it, right? Because again, the whole Donatella thing, the kissing thing, he can't kiss her or she'll, again. And he's just really frustrated with the fact that she can't remember any of this. So they're really close to each other, and she tries to pull away, but Jax holds her tight, nodding her hair in his fist and keeping his forehead pressed to hers. Please, little fox, remember. And the name did something to her. 2 simple words, only they did not feel simple at all. They felt like falling. And the quote is just, this little scene is just super cute in Evangeline's point of view. I think that Stephanie Garber, she just does what she does best. She does imagery so dang well. And that's one of the reasons why I love this book so much. But I'm getting ahead of myself because we've got more ground to cover here. But anyway, eventually they get out of the forest, they make it out, and they find their way to this inn. And he already has everything planned, it seems. So he has a room for the night booked already and lies to the innkeeper and says this is his bride and he would like to grab their room.
And there's only one bed.
But unfortunately, we don't get to get details into that right now because Stephanie Garber likes to torture us, and now we're back in Apollo's POV. So earlier in this book, Apollo was given a scroll by this Byron person, and like I mentioned earlier with words and stories and stuff, they just get twisted. You don't really know what's truth and what's a lie, so he keeps trying to burn it, and he's just really upset. Anyway, Wolfric Valor comes in and he wants to know information about this thing called the Tree of Souls. What is this? And so we learn that Apollo had never heard of this Tree of Souls thing before reading the scroll thing. And so he's asking for more information about it because all the scroll said was that the Tree of Souls are filled with blood, and anyone clever enough to find the tree and brave enough to drink its blood will be human, no more, but immortal. And so Wolfric is like, it sounds like a myth. I don't know about this. And Apollo's like, well, you should know because you planted this dang tree. And Wolfric is like, well, yeah, well, that was a huge mistake and I should not have ever done that because the Tree of Souls is evil. And then Apollo's like, well, sometimes evil is necessary. Again, we're trying to justify actions that are just not okay. And so Wolfric tells Apollo, there is never necessary evil, just poor choices. And I fear you are about to make one, boy. And good on Wolfric for calling him boy, because no, we are not a man. No. I think this is starting to, this scene really explains to us Apollo's reasonings for things, why he's acting super crazy. Let's get back to Evangeline and Jax and their one bed trope. So they're at this inn, like I said, and Evangeline and Jax, like, they're in this place of limbo, right? Like, Jax wants her, but he can't have her, but she doesn't know why. It's this whole thing, and he tries to, like, pour something on her, but it doesn't work. She's freaking out, and it just kind of goes everywhere and into, like, their noses and stuff together, so it seems like they're both about to pass out. But while this is happening, they're kind of like laying one on top of one another in the bed, and it's like a super cute little moment. And she's just trying to get more information out of him. She's like, you said you were my monster, but if you're mine, why would you bring me here just to leave me? None of this makes any sense. And he says, being yours does not make you mine. And she's like, but I know you. I know that I know you. And this close to him, she can see, like, they're really close to each other. And so from this angle, she can tell that his eyes are really glossy, but they look really red, and it looks like there's blood around his eyes. And if we know from book 2, he cries tears of blood. So, but she doesn't understand that. She's like, why are you even crying? And yeah, they're just getting really cozy bozy in bed right now. And again, nothing's really happening, but they're just, yeah. He's trying to hold himself back. She doesn't know what she wants. Falls asleep, okay? Because again, this little whatever pixie dust that he had made him fall asleep. And so she's still awake and she finds a note from his jacket, and it's a note that she had written that he had found, right? And it's the one about like, dear Evangeline, eventually you're gonna see Jax again, and whatever you do not be fooled by him, don't fall in love with him, blah 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 blah. And as she reads that, she remembers everything. The memory started out like a rainfall, slowly falling over Evangeline and blurring everything else as she remembered writing the letter to herself in the first place. And the chapter basically just goes over her memories overall. It says, he was always eating apples and taunting her. He'd held her like a grudge. Her memories didn't feel so much like her past as they felt like their story. The story of Evangeline and Jax, and it was a beautiful story. Her new favorite story. She wakes up from this reverie and Jax is gone and everything kind of goes downhill from here. She notices that Jax left a weird bracelet on her wrist and she has no idea what it is, but she doesn't really have time to think about it because at that moment, Apollo comes in with his guards. People in the inn are dead and he basically rescues Evangeline from Jax. He's super upset at her though. He's thinking that she has her memories back and she now knows what he did to her. So she has to pretend that they're in love and that he's still the bad guy and that he just ran away. He kidnapped her, but she's safe, all this stuff. So she's just pretending at this point. And Apollo's like, he's losing his grip on reality. Make their way to Marywood Village because like I said, they're trying to rebuild this village for the Valor family and Aurora is there. And she's acting all bubbly and friendly and stuff. But again, it's just kind of weird. And she gives Apollo a note. We kind of see them pass a note to each other, but Evangeline just tries to ignore everything that's going on with them. At this point, we get a backstory on how Apollo and Aurora met. So back in book 2, during the whole Apollo's trying to like kill Evangeline thing with the Archer curse, he's trapped in Chaos's lair, and after the Valley Arches open, Aurora makes her way there somehow and opens the door to Apollo's cage. He's like super grateful, blah blah blah, and she tells him someone as handsome as you shouldn't be looking so sad, but he explains to her why he is really sad, and she's like, I can help you fix it all. Drink this and for a short while you will have the power to erase it all from her memories. You can start afresh. You can remove whatever memories you want from her and rewrite a new story. So huge revelation right now. We finally figured out how he was able to take Evangeline's memories. It was from Aurora. And now you guys know why I chose Vanessa / Ursula to play her, okay? Because diabolical. Anyway, back to the present. We're starting to see why most people are intimidated of Aurora, including Apollo. Like, he knows how powerful she really is. And even though she says that I want to help you and all this stuff, it's just, why trust? You can't really trust someone like this, you know? And he at least has the good enough sense to like kind of think that, but is he gonna act on it? I don't know. Anyway, Apollo and Evangeline, they're supposed to be sharing this tent together because it wants them to start acting like husband and wife, but Evangeline's just, because now she knows the truth, she's very tense around him and he's starting to notice and he gets super upset about it, to the point where he tells her, I thought you were over this nonsense about you not acting like my wife. And he's holding onto her arm like really tightly to the point where it's kind of painful for her, and right when that happens, he immediately feels like a shock of pain and almost like a volt of electricity ran through him. And that's when he notices this weird bracelet that's on Evangeline. And he knows that this was Jax's doing. It's some sort of protection cuff, so whenever someone is about to hurt Evangeline, it causes pain to that individual. And that's when he realizes like, oh shoot, I was about to hurt this girl that I supposedly love. So that's not great. But he gets over himself and he leaves the tent, he leaves Evangeline alone, and he opens that note because remember, Aurora gave Apollo a note earlier in this little scene, and the note says to meet him at the edge of this forest, come alone and tell no one. So he makes his way over there and he has the audacity to ask Aurora for more of that juice so that he can take more of Evangeline's memories, because he's starting to suspect that her memories are coming back and he doesn't like that, so he wants more. And then the chapter ends with Aurora telling Apollo, do you want to keep asking silly questions, Prince, or would you like to become the sort of man your wife will never dare to think about leaving? So she's got something else up her sleeve. She's trying to convince him of this, and it just can't be good for anyone. But we're gonna switch gears again because we're going back to Evangeline in the tent. She's staring at this bracelet. She's not really sure what's going on. She doesn't know why Jax left it with her, but she's also starting to remember all these micro details that he had mentioned in previous books on why they can't be together. Like, you and I aren't meant to be. Sorry to break your fairy tale, little fox, but ballads don't end happily, and neither do the two of us. Every girl I've kissed has died except for one, and you are not that girl. I can go on. I told her so many times that they can't be together, and she's starting to remember all of that, and it's making her really sad, but she wants to try to get them to be together because they need to be together. I mean, they'd make beautiful babies. And because we miss her oh so much, Lala makes her entrance into the camp. She finds a way to sneak in. She's so excited to see Evangeline. She proceeds to tell Evangeline that she needs to stop with his whole like trying to find Jax, just trying to save Jax thing, because fates don't get happy endings, blah blah blah. But Evangeline, our girl E, she's all about that happily ever after story. We can't really blame her. Lala is trying to remind Evangeline, like, hey girl, you can't even kiss Jax. You want to die. Like, this just, it's not going to end well for either of you. And so Evangeline makes a really good point here. She says, I know that stories in the Magnificent North lie and they twist the truth. So this could be a lie. I am Jax's true love. I believe it with the same confidence that I believe that water fills the oceans and morning follows the night. I believe it with all of my heart and soul. There has to be some sort of magic in that, which I agree. She continues on and tells Lala, I no longer think love is a guarantee of victory or of happily ever after, but I think it's a reason to fight for those things. I know my attempt to save Jax could end in a fiery explosion, but I'd rather go up in flames with him than watch while he burns. And if that's not love, I don't know what is. Lala, she still doesn't approve, but she's a good friend, so she's like, all right, girl, I'm just gonna be here, hold your hand while you do this dumb thing, whatever it is you're gonna do. So she proceeds to help Evangeline sneak out of the tent and kind of like wear a disguise so that she can go and search for Jax. They go to the woods, they're making their way over there, and she runs into Jax, but Jax is acting really, really weird. He's calling her pet instead of little fox or Evangeline. And he seems really creepy. He seems distant, very vacant, very cold. She's telling him like, hey, I have my memories back and we can fight this, we can be together. And he's just like not for it, to the point where he actually tries to kiss her. And again, that can't be happening. So out of nowhere comes chaos and he saves Evangeline, I guess, and they run away. But this is one of my qualms with this book, is there's literally no details. Like, where did chaos come from? How did he know to be there when Jax was there? How are they all meeting up very conveniently in this forest? It's giving a Midnight Summer's Dream. I don't know. I digress. We need to go back to Dumb and Dumber. I mean, Apollo and Aurora, because she takes him to the Tree of Souls. And if you remember earlier in the book, they mention the Tree of Souls. They say it's evil, you cannot be going there. It was a mistake that that tree was ever planted. Not a good idea, but Aurora convinces Apollo that no, it is a good idea and follow me. And we just get like really weird details here. Like as Aurora is walking up to this tree, she's throwing flower petals around her so like the rain that's falling doesn't land on her. It's just like little micro details like that. I'm like, you could put in those details, but you can't give me more details on Jax. Just my opinion. Now, remember Aurora's dad warned Apollo of this tree. It's no bueno. But I guess Aurora was just never spanked as a child, because here we are not listening to our elders. So anyway, they get to the tree and Aurora tells Apollo that I will only help you become immortal if you do not try and kill Jax, because I want him for myself. And if you remember in the Hollow in book 2, Evangeline finds this like carving in the wood of like an A and a J and like a heart around it or whatever. And so this kind of confirms our theory that Aurora is obsessed and in love with Jax and wants him for herself. And my camera just died. Anyway, this is super important, so pay attention. Getting into the nitty-gritty details on this Tree of Soul things, right? There's like a set of steps one must accomplish before one becomes immortal. According to the scroll, now all Apollo has to do is pierce a branch from this tree and blood will come out of this tree, and you have to drink the blood and you'll become immortal. Seems pretty simple. However, Wulfric appears to his tree as well, and he's trying, this is a last-ditch effort, okay? He's trying really hard to convince Apollo to not do the dang thing, and is like, are you dumb, child? And Apollo's freaking out because he's like, oh my gosh, you're gonna kill me. And Wulfric's like, I'm not gonna kill you because you saved my life, you gave me back lands and all this stuff. So I'm gonna give you one more warning about this tree. The only reason the tree is still here is because I can't cut it down. If this tree dies, then I die. And so Wulfric is like, do you know what you're doing? Or did you simply just follow my cloud-headed daughter? So he gives a final warning and says, there is always a price to magic, to immortality. To gain eternal life, another life must be sacrificed. In this case, you would lose the life of the one you love the most. That's the reason I was given the seed to plant the tree. And then we get like a little backstory on how when he was younger, he was a fool like him, and he saved the life of some girl and was given the seed to plant this tree and to get immortality or whatever, but he didn't realize the cost. And so when he did the thing, the person that he loved most in the world ended up dying. So he's like, I'm trying to save Evangeline, and Paul's like, well, I'm trying to save her too. And Wulfric is like, I hope you mean that. Do not come near this tree or it will be the last thing you do. So yeah, it's getting pretty sketchy over here. So now we go back to Evangeline, and she is talking to Chaos, and he's telling her what happened, how she got the cuff on her, and what Jax traded in order for him to get this little bracelet, this little protection bracelet, because again, he's all about protecting Evangeline. He doesn't want her to die. She obviously doesn't know any ninja fighting skills, so she can't do it herself. So he gives her this bracelet, but in order to have this bracelet, he traded his heart for it, essentially. And in this book, it's super vague, but there's like your heart, like the organ, but then there's like the heart that has emotions, that has feelings, that has love, that has joy, that has all of those things, right? So it's this intangible thing that they make tangible, okay? And do you guys want to guess where he got this bracelet from and who he gave his second heart to? That's right, everybody. He gave it to Aurora. He gave his heart over to Aurora in order to protect Evangeline, and Evangeline is not gonna have it. And around this time, Lala shows up, and she's super upset with Chaos because they have this like weird thing back and forth. I don't know if Stephanie Garber's gonna give us a spin-off series with them, but anyway, these two characters, they just need to sort out whatever beef they have going on. Now Evangeline is super upset. She's like, no, he can't be giving his heart away to other people. I need to go get it back. I can save him. I don't need this bracelet. Let's go find it. And while this is happening, Apollo makes his way back to the tent. He finds that Evangeline is not where she's supposed to be, and he's super upset. He's yelling at the guards because he knows that Evangeline left of her own accord. Like the tent, it doesn't look like anyone broke in. It looks like she left willingly. She would only do that if she knew the truth about him. So he's really upset, and he's also kind of freaking out. So he sends his guards out to go find her. And Lala and Evangeline are now on the hunt looking for Jax's heart jar thing. And they figured that it's probably back at the Hollow where Aurora and Jax and all these kids used to play when they were kids, and she used to have like this little hiding place. So they go to this hiding place, they find a bunch of books, and they find a book with like journal entries from Aurora, and she's talking incessantly about Jax and the Ballad of the Archer and the Fox. And if you remember how that whole story goes, the archer is sent to hunt and kill the fox. He's like, he can't help it, and it's very reminiscent of the Archer curse that was put on Apollo, right? So we learn that because Aurora was so obsessed with Jax, she put this on him in order to get rid of this woman that he had been in love with, which was the fox from the story. And not only that, it also gives the impression that she has something to do with Jax's kisses. Now, did she do that because hell hath no fury like a woman scorned? Anyway, even though they got all this like really good intel, they did not find what they were looking for. So they make their way back to the village, and as they enter the village, there's like a little vendor guy who gives Evangeline a note, and it's from Jax. She knows immediately, and it says, do not come looking for me. So she knows that Jax is just trying to get away from her, and she's not having it. She's not having it at all. She's still running around looking for him, and then she finds this dead fox, and there's a note on the fox. It says, "A little fox for my little fox. I won't warn you again, Jax." At this point, it's like he's just lost his humanity, and so she needs to get it back. She needs to save him. Like, he's not this person, even though he kind of is, but not really. Yeah, she's freaking out. She's like, I just need to save him. Lala's like, we should just give up. Evangeline's like, no, we can't. And then Aurora comes to the scene, and they're all super mad at her because they're starting to learn the truth about how her feelings are for Jax and what has caused him to be the way that he is. And she tells him Jax actually took his heart back for himself, and he plans to burn it and destroy it forever. So sorry, but you're too late. And again, remember, it's not like this, like an actual heart. It's the second heart. It's whatever. It's the feelings. So I'm imagining the orb from Inside Out, like a little glowing ball. And so they explain that the only way to destroy it is from this tree that can go like turn on fire. It's called the Phoenix tree. Which, what is it with all these trees in the book? How couldn't it be like a shrub? A rose bush? And Evangeline said something super corny. It's probably the corniest line in the book, honestly. Aurora says, "How are you going to save him?" And she says, "With love." And Aurora laughs. It's like a super creepy, maniacal laugh. And Evangeline gets mad. She's like,
Love is nothing to laugh at.
and Aurora tells her, "It is today, because you see, Evangeline, even if you save Jax's heart, it's not going to be enough to save you. If you ever kiss him, you will die. It doesn't matter if your love is the truest love that the world has ever seen." And this is when Aurora tells Evangeline, "When I realized that Jax was never going to kill the fox girl from the Archer and the Fox story, I put another spell on him, but the story curse twisted the truth of it. It's not Jax's true love who will be immune to his kiss and make his heart beat again. Only a girl who will never love Jax can survive the kiss. Maybe your love can save his heart, but if you decide to kiss him, you'll just be one more fox that Jax has murdered." Quite the bombshell of a reveal, quite a tell. And if you've read the Carval series, you know what happens between Donatella and Jax and that whole shebang. If you haven't read it, skip like 15 seconds from this, because spoiler. But Donatella and Jax kiss, and Donatella doesn't die. So we now know that she was not his one true love. She just was never going to love him, and that's why she didn't die when they kissed. So not great news for Evangeline, because we may not know much, but we do know that this girl loves this guy. She's determined. She's like, we're going out with a bang here, okay? I'm gonna give it all I've got, and all I've got is my love for this man. So she goes to this tree, which is in the courtyard of the palace. She remembers seeing it from the first night she met Apollo. And essentially how this tree works is once all the leaves bloom, they turn gold or whatever, but you cannot pluck a leaf off of this tree or the whole thing will burst into flames. And that's exactly what Jax plans on doing. So she's trying to get there before him so she can convince him or take the jar. As she's making her way to the arch, she's just thinking about how much she has grown since the first time that she met Jax. She says her first night in the Magnificent North, she had believed that marrying a prince could make all of her dreams come true. Looking back, her dreams had felt impossible, and she had felt so courageous for believing in them. But now she realized those were never her dreams. They had never been dreams borrowed from stories, dreams she had clung to because she had yet to imagine her own dreams. So she's starting to learn that the stories that she grew up believing, they were stories that she thought that was her story, but it's not her story, and that's okay. Everyone has their own individual story. And I love that. She's also truly believing in her heart that love was more powerful than fear. It was the ultimate form of hope. It was stronger than curses. So we're putting that to the test, okay? Then we get this thought from Evangeline, which I think is like peak maturity and the climax of this novel. Like, oh my gosh, we're nearing the end, because she gets this theory: if he's kissed girls and they died, what if it was because they had the capacity to love him, but he never had the capacity to love back. And that's why the curse has never been able to break, is because he personally has never felt love. But she knows and she believes with her full heart that he loves her, and maybe that is enough for everything to be right with the world. So if he can just hold on to that hope, and like their love for each other will be enough. So anyway, eventually Jax makes his way over to this tree, and he's tossing this jar up in the air like it's just nothing important. And it reminds me of the jar of dirt from Pirates of the Caribbean. Part is described as rays of sunlight before they melted into the horizon. The jar was full of so many colors, mostly gold, but there were sparks of iridescent light that burst against the jar, making the gold look as if it were pounding. And Evangeline, she just wants this jar. She just wants the jar of dirt, okay? She's fighting him for it, and he's like, no. He's kind of like holding her back like this, with the jar of dirt over here, and she's probably just like this. I'm trying to reenact for you guys. Can you see it? Can you see what's happening? And then it says that the light inside the jar is starting to pound harder as if it were fighting to break free. Jax is starting to not look entirely unmoved. So remember, he's been pretty cold ever since he took his little heart out of his body and into the jar. And he's like, you need to go. And she's like, why? Because you're going to burn your heart, and once you do that, you think you'll hurt me? You're already hurting me, Jax. And she realizes that he isn't giving up, he's already given up. And so he tells her, how can I make you understand? You and I together do not end well, we just end. And then it says that the laughter died on his lips and the fire in his eyes went out. He looked like a ghost, a shell that had been emptied out and tossed in the waves too many times. And once again, Evangeline thought about how his heart had been broken over and over so many times that it couldn't hope, it could only fear. And he tells her, you were there, you saw what the cuff did the last time I tried to kiss you. Like it fired back and it hurt him. And something like shame fills his eyes, and Evangeline didn't know it was possible, but he looked even more fragile than before, as if it would take less than a touch to break him. And he tells her, this is as close as we get. And I just think he really needs a hug right now. But she's like, this is my last ditch effort, this is all I can do. So she looks him right in the eyes and she tells him, I love you, Jax. Finally get that declaration of love we've been waiting for so long. It's here. She tells him, and then she has this whole little monologue and tells him, I've made my decision, Jax. It's you. It will always be you until the end of time, and I'll fight fate or anyone else who tries to tear us apart, including you. You are my love, you are mine, and you are not going to be the end of me, Jax. And he tells her, I think I already am. He opens his eyes and they're dripping red tears. Let me go, Evangeline. He strokes her throat one last time, like he's ready to just let her go. He's just felt so guilty this whole time about hurting Evangeline over and over again. He tells her that he feels really guilty about why she lost her memories, that it was because of him, but then he doesn't know the truth about how Apollo did it. So she proceeds to tell him this information, hoping it would sway him, but it still is just not enough. He is not convinced that he has the capacity to not hurt Evangeline. Even though he tries, he just feels like he keeps doing it. And he tells her, if you die again, I cannot bring you back. So she says, you'd rather live without me? I'd rather you live. And she tells him, I am living, Jax, and I'm not going to die anytime soon. Then Evangeline closes her eyes and she kisses him. Best scene in the book, okay? Page 347 if you have the hardcover. If you know, you know. This is what we were waiting for 3 books now. We finally get it, and she describes it so beautifully. She says, it was a kiss like a prayer, quiet, almost pleading, made of tremulous lips and nervous fingers. It felt like reaching out in the dark, hoping to find a light. Jax's lips were slightly sweet and metallic, like apples and bloody tears, as he whispered against her mouth, you shouldn't have done that, little fox. It's like, why did it take so long for this to happen? I mean, I know why, but still. Just remembering this scene from the first time I read this book, I'm trying, like, I'm trying not to cry, okay? I'm trying not to cry because it was so beautiful. They are so beautiful. I love these two so dang much. Now I'm just reading you bits from this page because it deserves a spot on my channel forever. She says, it's less of a fever dream and more of a secret, a whispered, dangerous thing that might escape if he was too reckless. It had taken all the heartbreak, all the almost love and the wrong love to know that this love was true love. And if any of you guys watching are with someone who you know is your true love, you know exactly what she's talking about. I did. But anyway, when you get back to the story, so the jar drops, glass shatters, kiss evolves into like something far greater than it even was before because now he's like getting all these emotions put back into him. Then she starts to see stars. She's like kind of like swaying back and forth. She falls, he catches her, and he's freaking out. Jack starts screaming, and she can just feel his chest pounding like crazy. He's shaking uncontrollably. His chest is pounding. He's screaming, no, not again. And her eyes start to like flutter open, and she opens her eyes and she's looking up at him, and he's just like dumbfounded. He's like, how is this possible? And she says, it was a little endearing to watch. His sulky mouth gently parted as he seemed to forget how to speak. I already told you, you are the love of my life. You are mine, Jack said the hollow, and you're not going to be the end of me. So he's like, but you were dying. No, she said, a little embarrassed. I just forgot to breathe. Cheers, Jackson Evangeline. To you. Chapter 42. Once upon a time, there was nothing but kissing and everything was perfect. And then there was even more kissing. So now we know that it was Jax's love that was needed to break the curse all along. He just needed to love someone back. That's literally all it was. And then chapter 43, he looks down at her after, they're just having fun under this tree, stroking each other's hair and whatnot, and he looks at her and says, I love you. This isn't just for now, it's for always, little fox. They're just having like a really cute moment here underneath this tree all alone. But unfortunately, our story is not over, because the problem with happily ever after is that it's more of an idea than reality. A dream that lives on after a storyteller is finished, but real stories never finish. And it seems that Evangeline and Jax's story was not over yet. Because then we hear like that slow, creepy clap that you hear at like the end of some action movie where the villain is like, oh, great performance, we love that, but it's too bad for you guys that I'm here now and I'm gonna mess everything up. Because that's exactly what happens because Apollo is here. And honestly, what a loser move, right? Like, he would be slow clapping. So what does he do? Because he's just not happy that all he was given in life was to be a prince. Poor princey boy. So he plucks a leaf from this tree and it just erupts into flames. Jax screams, he pushes Evangeline out of the way, and Apollo grabs her and makes a run for it. And then the chapter ends, and now we're in Apollo's POV again. Chapter 44. Evangeline continued to scream and hit Apollo with her fist hard enough that she might even leave bruises, yet he barely felt the blows. She'd chosen Jax again. She'd chosen wrong again. Now again, remember, he's like a super narcissist, okay? He's convinced that he is not enough for Evangeline yet again, and he thinks it's because he's just a plain mortal, and that's why she doesn't have the hots for him. Someone needs to sit this boy down and have a nice long conversation. Anyway, the cuff that's on Evangeline, it's doing its work and it's causing Apollo to be in a lot of pain. So he's doubling over. He's like vomiting because he's in so much pain. So she's trying to get away, but he like drags her by the ankles. He's pulling her back. And then he just ties up her arms and legs together so that she can't like run away. That's a real sign of true love, isn't it? He's just not gonna let her go. Even through all this pain, even though she's trying to get away, he's like, he still loves her. He looks at her, bound on the ground, pink hair clinging to her cheeks as she's crying. She betrayed him and broken his heart, but if she had only a few minutes left on this earth, he wanted them to be together. Don't worry, my sweet. Soon enough, this will all be over, he whispers. Then he picks her up once again and carries her in his arms. Jax, meanwhile, he is trying to see through smoke and flames. He's hearing a screaming voice. He thinks it's Evangeline, so he's following the voice. But of course, it's not Evangeline, it's Aurora, and she tells him, because she's so happy right now that Evangeline is about to die, she tells him what the plan is with Apollo and the Truth Souls, and so Jax is super upset and he has to run to get there. And back at the Tree of Souls, Evangeline, she's crying. She tries to talk down Apollo off this crazy ledge that he's on, but it's to no avail. He is just convinced that like if I can't have you, no one can have you, kind of thing. So I'm gonna do this thing, and if you die, so be it, but I still love you though. But you may die, but I love you. And he's like stroking her cheek and just being super creepy. And he's telling her, this is just the hardest choice I've ever had to make. And he's like kissing her while she's bound up against this creepy tree with like creepy faces on it. Like, it's just not a good look for Apollo. Entering Jax, he's opening up a can of whoop-a, okay? He is not happy, so he starts fighting Apollo. He's getting in all the punches he couldn't get in this whole series. But of course, they get interrupted yet again because the Valor family shows up and all of these boys start holding back Jax because they're gonna let Apollo do whatever it is he's gonna do. They're not preventing anything from happening, and Jax is so upset. He's like, don't you guys know this is the love of my life? You know this, the whole world knows this. What are we doing letting Apollo do this? And all they say to Jax is like, well, he's her husband, so like he can do what he wants. Like, I'm sorry, what year are we in? So then Apollo gets his sword and he slices through the tree, and then the blood drips down and he just gobbles it up. And Jax is screaming. He's screaming Evangeline's name. He's calling her little fox. He's feeling completely helpless once again. She tells him, I love you, Jax. He tells her, I love you. And it just seems like all hope is lost at this point. Now I would just like to throw in this little anecdote here, okay? Because never in the history of stories or movies or anything, something good come out of drinking blood. And that includes when you accidentally bite your lip from eating too fast, okay? That stuff hurts for days. So let's get a good look at what's happening with Apollo right now. He chokes a little and sputters, but then he finishes with a scarlet smile made of red teeth and bloody lips. Other than that, he was perfect. He should have looked awful, but he had changed. Apollo was glowing the way Jax did sometimes. His nose was no longer broken. His eyes were no longer swollen. Apollo's gaze was golden, as brilliant as the stars above. I feel like a god, he said with a laugh. But then the ground starts to start pulsing, and the force of it shakes Evangeline, and so she starts rolling away from the tree. And when she looks up, Apollo stumbles. He rights himself up quickly, but then he stumbles again as he tries to walk away from the tree. Evangeline watched his glowing skin go gray, and his handsome face contorts as he attempts to take another step. He's freaking out, and he makes eyes with Wulfric because he's like, what's happening? And Wulfric's like, I warned you. I told you before, if you valued your life, you would forget all about this tree. And Apollo was like, you told me it would take the life of the person I love most. And Wulfric says, it is. It's taking you. And so, without getting into the gory details, because this scene it does get a little vivid, Apollo gets kind of sucked up into the tree. This, my friends, is why we don't try to play God. Nay, nay. So yeah. The Tree of Souls is exactly as it had been before, only now there was a new horrified face trapped inside the trunk. Chapter 49, Evangeline. Unfortunately, the happy ending still isn't here quite yet because Jax is still super pissed at what happened and being held back from saving Evangeline, and Wulfric didn't know for sure that this is what would happen to Apollo. He just took a gamble. And so Jax is not happy about that at all. He's like, why would you risk Evangeline's life? Like, even though we knew Apollo was a narcissist, we didn't really know what was gonna happen. How could you do this? That was a risky game you played there, Wolfie. But anyway, the Magnificent North no longer has a prince. Prince Apollo is no longer. So the Valor family, they're like, well, we could just take it over. We used to have it years ago. Should be no problem to take it over again. Let's go, fam. So they make their way out. They're not too excited about what Aurora's role was in this whole scheme. I think they're just having a hard time admitting that their children are monsters because, again, remember, Aurora's a monster, but Chaos is too. So their fam just has a lot of problems. But again, I'm hoping we get another book because we just need to dive into this. We need to see her gone and him redeemed and a whole bunch of stuff. But as for Evangeline and the Prince of Hearts, that is just absolutely not their problem anymore. Even though he's bloodied up and bruised, she thinks he's as beautiful as ever. And as they walk away from the tree, she asks him, where are we going? And he says, we can go wherever you want, little fox. They're making their way out of this tree cave place, and she looks up at him and she's like, I just have one more question. He's like, you can ask me whatever you want. So she's like, tell me about the apples. He's like, next question. He's not really inclined to really give a straightforward answer here, so we don't really get one. All he says is, it doesn't matter, I don't need them anymore. The girl's lashes fluttered with surprise. The not quite so human boy leaned in closer, and the story curse decided to stop watching. It was time to leave these two alone and let them live their happily ever after. Other stories were brewing in the magnificent north. And that, my friends, is A Curse for True Love by Stephanie Garber. There is a bonus epilogue in several copies of these books. I have the Barnes & Noble version as well as the Owl Crate edition, so there's two different story endings here. They are not true story endings. They are just what Stephanie Garber thought could be alternate endings, which I thought was super creative because, again, the stories in the Magnificent North are constantly changing and shifting. So it's almost a replica of that world that she built, which I thought was super clever. But yeah, that is the entirety of the Once Upon a Broken Heart series. I'm so sad that it ended. I wish we had more chapters with Jax, honestly, but it did have a nice ending. I had a lot of action towards the end, and it really gave us a different look on Apollo. His shift from like hero to zero was a crazy ride. I just love this book so much. I love love. I love the love that is shown between Evangeline and Jax, and I'm excited to see what else Stephanie Garber comes up with. If you stuck around this long, thank you so much for watching. I appreciate it so much. You guys are seriously a godsend. Go ahead and let me know in the comments what other books you want me to do a plot summary of. If you haven't already watched my Powerless plot summary, I will leave it up here. And until next time, I will see you in my next video. Mwah. Bye!